We are using grow tents to grow many of our crops this season. First, why grow tents? The main reason is to save cost. In the middle of winter, it's quite costly to heat a greenhouse or a propagation house. When it's 0 degrees out and we want to get our season rolling, we can use grow tents in a room that's already conditioned and insulated, and simply put, it's lower cost to pay for the electricity for the lights than it is to pay for gas or a heating source in an outside space like a propagation house or a greenhouse. And the second reason is quality. We can really dial things in here, give these little seedlings exactly the conditions they want, and have very quick growth. 2 to 3 weeks is usually all we need to cycle crops in and out of here, and high quality, luscious green plants. So some features that I like about these particular tents. First, I should say we chose them mainly because of the PEVA, non-toxic material that they're made out of, which has higher reflectivity than Mylar and some other materials that grow tents are made out of. And I think there's something to it. You can really see the lush green growth in here with the LED light setup that comes with the kit. Second, they do a really good job of putting in ports just where we need them. And ports would be small openings that we can run mechanicals through. It might be a bit difficult to see here, but in the back there's a port that we can plug a heater in. There's a couple of vent ports up top here. There's a port that we run the cable for the grow lights out of the tent. And so it's fairly easy to set up and very flexible, we found, to use. We like the zipper approach here. You can see we've got this tent all the way opened up here. This one here, we've just opened up a viewing window, which lets us see what's going on in here. Here, these plants are about ready to be transplanted, and so we don't mind having full ventilation, getting full ventilation to them and starting the acclimation process and really cool things off in here. Another feature I really like is they put a splash pan down here. This is where all the mess is in the bottom of the grow tent, and so we can simply take out this splash pan down here every so often, give it a hosing, and replace. So I want to explain a little about how we are using these tents. We're trying to grow a wide range of crops, from onions to ginger to tomatoes and lettuce and spinach, and on a micro scale, diversified farm like ours, that means we have a lot of work to do to create those optimum conditions. The first couple weeks of life, this is where farming is hard. After these guys are out of here in the field, transplanted, that's when I feel like my job gets a lot easier to do. So what I've done here is I bought Inkbird external thermostats. There's one for each of the tents. We have 2 tents set up here. And the Inkbird will accept a heating device and a cooling device. And these are nice airtight tents, and we found them to be very low cost to both cool and heat. So we'll set the Inkbird to the temperature that we want. What I often do is I'll Google what's the optimum germination temperature for cilantro, for instance, and boom, that's what we'll set it for. When those cilantro seedlings have germinated, seeds have germinated, we'll move them over perhaps to a grow tent, and then we can also research what's the optimum conditions in that grow tent. And in reality, for most crops, it's around 70, 72 Fahrenheit. And for cilantro, we're germinating them colder, in the mid-60s. And so dialing in those numbers, getting real precise, means that we're getting all of our seeds virtually, we're getting great germination on all of our seeds and good seedling growth. The cooling device I'm using is simply our reach-in cooler here. I've drilled a hole into it and then mounted inline fan between the cooler and the tent. So this one is Amazon purchase. TerraBloom makes this, and I put some duct openers here so that when it's not in use, it's closed, and so cold air isn't leaking in here. So it's going to mount this direction, and we'll plug this into the Inkbird cooling device here, and that will cool these tents down as we need. And actually, this is a 4-inch. We used a 6-inch for that purpose to make sure we had enough cold and it cools them down very quickly. In reality, 4-inch would probably also work too. So the heating device, we simply put a small electric space heater, a little personal size space heater, which would be in the bottom of our tent that we use for germination over here. So there are a lot of ways to heat and cool these things, but like I said, with the ports, you've got a lot of flexible options. Another system I should mention would be, of course, the grow lights. And the grow lights and the grow lights we plug into a timer. And I like to use Wi-Fi timers that we can control these with our phones. GoSund is who we use for this, and I'll include a link so you have those. But in reality, you can go to the hardware store and purchase low-cost timers for $5 or so that work as well. These are about $10 each. So all these systems are fairly low cost, and certainly the inline fans and the timers you can get at your local hardware stores. Another system I should mention here would be a vent fan. There is a port out the top, and what I do is I mount one of these inline fans in as a vent fan, and I have it set to cycle on middle of the night for about 10 minutes and middle of the daytime for about 10 minutes. If we have a closed tent, you want to make sure there's fresh air that's constant, fresh air cycling through that tent every so often, or else you'll have a mildewy, moldy mess in there eventually. The last thing I want to mention is how do you water in here without making a big mess? We can't easily bring hoses in. You certainly could, but and watering cans can work, which we do use sometimes. But for the most part, I prefer to use what I call a bottom watering system. And so we have trays underneath our seedlings, and I have a handy homemade watering can that I'm going to use to lift up the seedlings, and go ahead and put maybe a 1/4 inch of water down here. And that's it. These guys will soak up all the juice they need. And I've found that as long as I water each of these trays every 3 days, every 4 days perhaps, that's been more than sufficient without creating a mess. Now, these are, to get a bit technical, paper pot chains, which I describe in other videos. But you do want to make sure that the roots can get air underneath them. And so what I do is I'll water them, let them soak for 10 or 15 minutes, and all that water will soak up. And then I'll go ahead and remove the trays from underneath, and these roots will air prune so that the oxygen can get to the roots, and it actually does a pretty good job of killing off roots underneath so that you don't have a thick intertwined mat of roots, which makes transplanting a real bear of a project. So these are my grow tents and how we've set them up here at the farm.